just a few comments about particularly Andrew's comments earlier and about better places and accessibility. It's really exciting to hear this kind of thing is creeping its way onto the agenda for a couple of reasons, really, I think. One is that I come from an economic and social background, not from a highways background. So to hear that CIHT is diversifying its membership and pulling in members from other sectors and other areas of interest is really exciting, because it's dawned on me in the 8 years that I've worked in transportation that it is one of the most fundamental things to supporting inclusion and accessibility and cohesion. It's so fundamental. I mean, we talk about integrating transport into kind of the wider infrastructure of places, and it's absolutely essential to delivering effective places. And some of what I'm going to talk about, and I work with Highways England, really tries to emphasise that we're getting there, but we're not there yet. So what I want to do is talk a little bit about social inclusion itself, maybe try and give you a brief articulation of what it is and what it's about. Talk about what's relevant to the highway sector, what that agenda kind of looks like a little bit. It won't touch on CIHT because I think we've probably covered that, but and then I want to chart a bit of a journey. So I want to talk a little bit about how we've been working with Highways England. You may have noticed a small inconspicuous stall out there that they've got as kind of one of the leading UK highways providers to explore social inclusion and social issues in highways a little bit more thoroughly and a little bit more comprehensively, and just to chart how we're getting on with that process, really. So I think it's fair to say that social inclusion is on the national agenda, it's on the international agenda, it's a priority for Mott MacDonald, it's a priority for the people we work for and who we work with. And I think it is an increasingly important part of how the highway sector operates. But I think it's not often understood in this context. I think we often try and impress on people what social inclusion is about, but it often falls on deaf ears. And I'm not having a dig at engineers or designers or transportation professionals, but it's often something of a peripheral consideration still. So what do we mean by social? We often have to articulate this, and I think for most people social starts and ends here. For a lot of us these days, social starts and ends here. These four logos, most of you probably fairly familiar, and if you're considerably younger than me, there's probably a load of other logos that you're aware of that I'm not. So social has these kind of meanings, but what does it mean for us? Well, in principle, what we're talking about is people. Social is people. Social is the idea of society. It's the idea of communities. It's groups of people living and interacting through work, leisure, and other forms of interaction. And if I hadn't made it clear by now, I'm going to kind of try and remind everybody in here that it's pretty fundamental, and it's one thing we really need to get right. It's one thing we need to acknowledge and recognise and understand the importance of in delivering highways infrastructure and highway schemes, or any infrastructure, or any schemes actually. So at Mott's, we're making our own commitments to social inclusion a bit more visible. We're trying to push ourselves to make it clear what the purpose of the work that we do as an engineering and development consultancy, what it's about. So up there, there's a quote from our chairman, Keith Howells, which focuses on building the communities of tomorrow, and ensuring that solutions are more inclusive, are about addressing inequalities. And as I say, as someone from a kind of a non-engineering background, this is music to my ears from a long-standing engineer of 40, 50 years. But it isn't just us either. So social inclusion is on the agenda in UK policy, in UK legislation, and my drum is the Equality Act 2010. So I work a lot in equality, diversity, and inclusion as part of this, which asks public sector authorities to consider the impacts of their policies, plans, programmes, actions, activities, projects on different sections of society. Most really need to be able to show that a range of groups have been considered and that reasonable steps have been taken to eliminate things like discrimination, to advance equality of opportunity, and to foster good relations between different parts of communities. Internationally, it's on the global agenda as well. So if you work in international highways, or if you work in international development projects, you'll know that of the 17 UN Sustainable Development Goals, I hope this works, it does, 5 are really primarily focused on social inclusion. So up there you've got no poverty as number 1, gender equality at number 5, reduced inequality at number 10, and sustainable communities at 11. So these things are really, they're very present in terms of how governments and how international organisations view the priorities for development. And this brings me to the highways agenda a little bit more. So these drivers are putting this on the highways agenda, and they're kind of, we can articulate them through four key areas, I think. So for those of us who work in the highways supply chain, we're seeing increasing client demand for this stuff. New processes, new priorities, new deliverables in the projects that we're involved in. And we know that is driven not just by what they want, but what they need to deliver. They've kind of known for a long time, our clients and our collaborators, that ensuring that services are delivered in a fair and equal way that doesn't impact negatively or disproportionately negatively on different communities, especially those who experience exclusion or disadvantage, is about, it's good decision making. It's about the right thing to do. And often what we find is that some guidance is needed. So some support, and some guidance on how these inclusive outcomes can be maximised. But there are practical and pragmatic reasons. Not that better decision making isn't practical and pragmatic, but there are perhaps bottom line reasons, other bottom line reasons. So we talked about how the Equality Act drives inclusion. So, meeting legislative requirements, that's important. Ensuring that steps are taken to maximise the benefits can help to manage project risk. It can help to avoid delays through challenge. It can help to minimise reputational risk, and it can manage adverse community impacts that might otherwise scupper and damage the credibility and ultimately the delivery of a scheme. And what does that mean? Have I got my last one? Ooh, yeah, 3 clicks away. There we go. An inclusive scheme is a more economically efficient scheme. So implementing a project which is fully accessible to a wide range of users is going to be more socially sustainable, it's going to be more financially sustainable, and it offers opportunities to ensure that the resulting jobs and economic benefits and economic growth that might come from the delivery of infrastructure, and highways infrastructure in particular, are spread across the broadest spectrum of local people. What I wanted to do for the sort of second half, the last bit of this talk, is to take you through what that kind of means for us in the context of a professional relationship with one of Mott MacDonald's key clients, with one of the key interfacing organisations for kind of everyone in this room, really. And what I want to do is talk to you about our journey with Highways England. So how, not Mott MacDonald as a whole necessarily, but I think that's broadly true, but how the work that we do on the projects that Mott MacDonald delivers for Highways England, how that's changed over the last 10 years. And I think what this does is it gives us an idea of the growing importance of these kinds of issues and these kinds of considerations for the sector. It shows that what's driving this is both a product of push and pull. So push from the parts of the sector that we work with, our clients, our collaborators, our supply chain, but also pull from us. It's about us wanting to do more and to help our clients do more, recognising, of course, that the speed of change needs to be managed carefully, and we need to develop in a way that maximises the benefits, not just at the fastest rate possible. We also think that this that one of the big things I'm going to talk about is collaboration. So I think that what this also emphasises is that collaborating can help to deliver better and more socially inclusive outcomes as well. But for me, it's all about the journey. So it's about the journey we've taken with them. We've been working with them for about 10 years now. And it's about how the work that we do for them has changed. It's about what they've asked of us has changed, and it's about what we have proposed and pushed towards them has changed. So it's that push, it's that pull, and it's about the relationship, and it's about the journey that we've taken together. So I'm going to take you through 6 or 7 key steps from our first key kind of inclusion project back in 2009 or so, and through kind of what is effectively a real breakthrough for us, which was the development of the Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Toolkit, EDIT, which Highways England now make use of in its projects, through our role in delivery. So what we do through delivery, so equality impact assessment, environmental assessment, social distributional impact appraisal, and inclusion action planning, all of which form part of Highways England project processes. Okay. So I'm going to take you through just a few of these key areas. So 2009 is where it starts. This is where we really began to develop our practice in this area. Shortly before I joined Mott MacDonald, we supported what was then the Highways Agency on work to improve accessibility of the strategic network for disabled people. So this was a stakeholder-driven process that used engineering expertise to identify particular priorities on the network for ensuring that it was compliant with legislation. What it was a new service area for Mott MacDonald. It was kind of something new that both Highways England and Motts were kind of working out together. So it was the first time that we'd really been asked to break from an exclusive focus on the traditional engineering side of highways delivery and think more about service users and about communities. It's a bit of a watershed moment for us. You scroll forward a little bit, and we see a highways agency that has kind of done some work to develop a lot of its internal processes, especially around things like equality, diversity and inclusion, what I call EDI. And we were asked in 2012 to undertake one of the first large equality impact assessments on a piece of Highways England work. This was on the Future Managed Motorways concept, which most of you will probably know as smart motorways now. And what this did was emphasise a shift in focus towards users. The different kinds of users and different categories of users. And in this case, what we did was look at how different user groups might be affected by changes to the motorway environment. So thinking about what happens in the event of an accident, thinking about what happens in the event of lane closure or opening of the hard shoulder, and thinking about groups who might be affected by that. So, for example, people with mobility impairments, older people who might lack confidence, or younger novice drivers who might be wary of the motorway environment generally, but more wary of a motorway environment that they're less familiar with. And again, stakeholder engagement was a large part of what we did for that project. Just big up to us, that impact assessment is generally kind of cited in all individual smart motorways projects. It sets a bit of a benchmark for the issues that smart motorways need to consider around equality and diversity. It's generally cited as good practice, so we're really chuffed with that. But for me personally, and I think for our team, this is the one for me. This was the make or break one, and it was a great example of where Highways England sought specific support in sort of the development of its organisational practice around social inclusion. So this is where we really started to see that they were actively pursuing socially inclusive outcomes, and they wanted some help and some guidance. So we developed for them in 2014, 15, 16. It's kind of quite a long process, but primarily in 2015, the Equality, Diversity and Inclusion tool called EDIT. It was designed in response to a set of quite specifically socially focused challenges. And the idea was to help project teams make a more informed decision about equality, diversity and inclusion issues and how they related to major schemes, but also programmes of maintenance and renewals as well. What it does is it takes the team's knowledge about the project. It takes a picture of the social and demographic profile of a local area. It takes a load of equality and diversity research that we undertook separately, and it pushes them together in a kind of a user interface that asks project teams questions that they might not otherwise have considered about how their their project works and how it interacts with certain elements. What it did effectively was mark a bit of a step change in kind of how Highways England sort of dealt with social inclusion issues on individual project delivery. It coincided with them shifting to become Highways England, a government-owned company, and changes in their focus around an emphasis on customers and communities, which hadn't perhaps been quite so prominent before. And this kind of formed part of a wider process of supporting development and processes within the organisation in this area. So we helped to roll EDIT out, we helped to integrate it into the equality impact assessment process, and we supported things like engagement with disabled people and other user groups. And this is all linked back to those kind of drivers, really, that helping to improve decisions that were made, helping to support compliance and manage risk, and helping to manage the challenges and the economic costs that might be associated with failure to properly take account of social issues in these projects. And again, we built on the momentum that EDIT provided to support and change the way we worked with them as an organisation. And what we have here is part of the suite of new strategies that Highways England launched last year. We were instrumental in helping them to develop and draft and deliver their accessibility strategy, which talks about so many of the things that we've talked about here today. So it talks about communities, it talks about places, it talks about pedestrians, it talks about the built environment, it talks about people, and it talks about how they interact with the strategic road network. The other aspect of this is that it really changed our relationship with Highways England in terms of social inclusion. So this was all about collaboration. The team was pretty seamless, and what we found was that the building different bits of expertise, so around road safety, around non-motorised users, but also around social inclusion, economic impact and communities, we were able to put a team together that was able to draft an accessibility strategy that met the needs of all of the stakeholders that Highways England are serving, so Passenger Focus, the regulator, and other the DFT and others, to ensure that it was compliant and actually fit for purpose for what Highways England wanted to do around accessibility going forwards. You can find the strategy on the gov.uk website. I love telling people that. You can find something that we did on gov.uk. Since then, I'll draw this up now. We've worked closely with the team in Highways England to work on project delivery. So returning to our kind of core around equality impact assessment, particularly as part of the newly consolidated project control framework. So the project controls within Highways England are the kind of key drivers for different aspects of project delivery. So working within that structure, working within that system, to help deliver the components of what Highways England considered to be a socially inclusive project. And what this did effectively was emphasise for us the importance of inclusion on major schemes. We kind of recognised and pushed the fact that inclusion was an important component of kind of delivering on the roads investment strategy, which runs to 2020 and will continue beyond that. Understanding the impact of schemes on particular sections of the community and how important that was, and identifying measures to improve more inclusive outcomes, so identifying things that could perhaps increase the benefits of projects. Oh, I'm a slide. I think I'm a slide out of order. Give me 1 second. So this kind of complemented existing activity that's already part of the way that transport projects are appraised and approved. So it fits alongside a consideration of people and communities for as part of the planning process. So where highway schemes go through development consent order, transport and work acts, or just plain old planning permission, the impacts on people and communities is also already considered, and this has strengthened the kind of the inclusion aspects of that. And if you're familiar with DFT's processes, you'll know that WebTag asks schemes to look at social impacts and distributional impacts. So who is likely to be affected by a scheme and how extensive those effects are likely to be. So it kind of builds up this kind of basket of measures that emphasises how important social inclusion is in this area and the ways that we have at the moment of measuring it. I'm just going to skip back very quickly because the last step in this journey is around some of the newer processes that we've started working on just this year. This step is about the collaborative performance framework. So if you're aware of how Highways England procure its services, you may or may not be. Part of how Highways England asks its supply chain to collaborate to deliver projects is premised on this collaborative performance framework, which has a number of measures and a number of metrics. And encouragingly for a social inclusion practitioner, those metrics include social sustainability, where project teams are asked to think carefully about the capacity and profile of their workforces. Are they representative? Are they inclusive? They're asked to think about how services are delivered within local areas and what the relationship of a project is like with local communities and local stakeholders. And all of that is consolidated into an inclusion action plan, so a set of concrete actions and objectives that project teams will commit to deliver and that is checked on by Highways England to ensure that what teams learn about their employees and about their communities is put into practice through the project process. So what we've tried to do is help to develop a single unified approach to this. This is an internal thing within Mott MacDonald to support our project teams to make sure that they understand that this isn't a bolt-on, this isn't something extra, this is a core part of what delivering for Highways England now means. Let's jump past that. So just to tie this up a bit, the thing I probably want to stress is that we've developed our approach in this area alongside Highways England and with the sector at large. We've worked with them to understand where we're going and to try and push that a little bit as well. So for me, the key messages are that it's a great illustration of how moving from some of these smaller individual little pieces of work to kind of a full collaborative approach can really add value to projects and to add social value. It's for us and for the sector as a whole. It's also a great example of how it's possible to bring in specialist knowledge. Am I a technical specialist? Just check what I'm called. Yes, I am. I'm a technical specialist. So bringing specialist knowledge and expertise to meet specific needs of the sector and of communities. So it doesn't always have to be we'll have a go at that. We'll try it. We'll see how it works. But there are specialists who can, we hope, improve highways projects in terms of their social outcomes. We've kind of been surprised at the depth of so many highways teams across the sector, whether it's consultancy, construction, client, all of these teams. There's some hidden gems tucked away there who are really interested and focused on this stuff. I think, and it's also worth stressing that, and this is the pitch, I suppose, is that there are skills in the commercial sector who can help to improve performance. We can support delivery, we can help to drive positive outcomes, we can help clients to manage cost and risk. And finally, I think it's a great example of how that collaboration can drive positive outcomes for users, for partnerships, for clients, and for communities and people in those communities who traditionally have experienced disadvantage.